Johannes Huizinga. I was born in Loppersum in the Netherlands in 1945. My spouse, we met in the Netherlands. I've known her since kindergarten, actually. And not that I liked her necessarily. But we met when we were 16 and kind of fell in love and had some dating things. And she immigrated to the United States in 1963 with her family. And I was 17 and a half, and so was she. We are the same age. And she was not allowed to stay in the Netherlands, and I was still in school, and I could not immigrate to the United States. But my dad promised her that he would let her go to the, that he would let me go to the United States if we were still in love after I graduated. All I heard was, I can go to America, so I did. In the United States, however, as part of the immigration process to get my Social Security number, I also had to register for the draft. And that's kind of where that kicks up. A year later, we were married. So we were married in September of 1965, and when we came back from our honeymoon, there was a draft notice in the mail. And that kind of set the stage for me trying to get into the National Guard or the reserves, or, you know, the various stories that people talk about, which concluded in me enlisting. I didn't want combat arms, so I enlisted to be a medic, because I figured hospital duty was better than grunt duty. Went to Fort Knox to the reception center, and they were full. This was the big build-up, 1965 build-up. And I wound up at Fort Benning to go for basic. I was walking around my second day in basic training around the barracks, just getting oriented with my hands in my pocket, which was a no-no, I guess. At the time, I didn't know. And I didn't pay attention. I mean, I had just gotten there, and there's a drill sergeant. He asked me why I had my hands in my pocket. I says, I don't know. I says, give me 10. And I said, 10 what? And he said, push-ups. And I said, what's a push-up? Because I'd get in trouble periodically because of understanding. And I don't think the drill sergeants were very understanding about that at all. Most of the guys were draftees and they didn't want to be there anyway, so I was just another smart aleck. On the other hand, I sometimes yelled at them with a smile on my face and some Dutch curse words, but made me feel better anyway. The medical training was good. And the whole period of time at the AIT was so much more relaxed than basic. And medics are, I guess, a different breed anyway, not quite as militaristic, if you will. Then I reported to the 4th Infantry Division and was assigned to 2nd of the 12th Infantry at that time. So I came in February of 1967. Got to Vietnam, and they sent me to Pleiku, where the 4th Division was. So when I had processed in at Pleiku, they gave me my records, told me not to open them, and report to Camp Alpha in Saigon and find my unit. So I was at Saigon for a couple of days, not knowing what to do, asking people, well, when somebody from your unit comes by here, you can hop on a chopper and join them. It was really flaky. Dao Cheng actually was an established base. The French had used it. It was almost a French colonial area. It was a large rubber plantation that belonged to the Michelin tire company. And the village, or the city, had a rubber processing factory on the Saigon River. And so that was the claim to fame for that place. And our unit was actually stationed. We lived underneath the rubber trees. There was other buildings there. The French had some planters' houses, and I guess the boss may have lived there on the corner. And they found this other building that looked like it was just a big pool area. It was built up. It was a 12-foot high walled building. And when we cleaned it up, we found out that actually was a swimming pool. So they cleaned it, painted it, put water in it. And we used it as a recreational pool from when we were not out in the field. I was a medic, combat medic, trained to save lives and lives and limbs. That was my primary duty. And even though I was assigned to the headquarters company, I was then attached to Alpha Company, and they were in a forward area after I'd gotten to Dao Cheng, so I flew out again on a chopper and joined the unit in the front area. Basically, a typical day at that time was just go on a patrol during the day, and this was an established forward base camp, so we didn't have to dig a foxhole because they were already there. Another day would be if you'd go on other, what they called search and destroy missions. We would go out, traipse through the jungle, find a place to bivouac at night, and then dig a foxhole, fortify it, help pull guard duty or radio watch. It was part of the RTO and the medic and the company clerk, I guess, for sharing that duty. And then in the morning break camp and start all over again. And the thing I distinctly remember is the wait a minute vines. You know, these are bamboo with thorns on them, and the thorns are about the size of my little finger. The bamboo is about the size of my wrist. And when you got your gear on and you're walking through this, you're going to get caught. So it was, you know, you get for it, and we had to hurry up to get to where we needed to be, but you know, you forever hang up in these stupid bamboo thorns. I guess maybe after I'd been in country for about a month, we were out in an area, and I remember sitting in the airstrip. It's a Sunday afternoon and it's hot. And we are waiting and waiting and waiting for these choppers to come and take us down to where we need to go. We were going to go on choppers, and then they told us to get off. We're going on the next lift. Okay, so we back off the choppers. The first lift goes out, and sadly, happily for us, but sadly for them, they got blown up pretty good. And our platoon was the last ones to leave. We secured the landing zone and everybody got out, and we were the last ones to leave. And right about the time we were ready to leave, we took some small arms fire. And we retaliated and caught a couple of Viet Cong who had apparently been in a hospital that was on the ground and couldn't get away when we were there, and one of us was an amputee. Anyway, he had some blood on him, and the lieutenant said, "Hey, Doc, take a look at him," which I did. Now, I carried an M16 at the time. I mean, medics did carry weapons in Vietnam. And I gave my M16 to one of the other soldiers, and I went and looked at this guy. And when I got to him, he had been sitting on a grenade, which was attached to his belt by the pin loop and like a red hanky type thing. And he pulled this thing out, and he was going to drop it. At which time I picked up this grenade, tossed it to the lieutenant, and says, "Get rid of this thing." But during the time, you know, my job was to take care of this guy. And then the grenade, and I got rid of the grenade, and I took care of him. I had a wife, I had a child, and I knew death did not faze me. I mean, if I had to die, I knew that I was going to be okay. I was just worried about my wife and my child, and my prayers always were, "Lord, let me live so I can take care of them." And that helped me focus on the job. Because everything up until that point hadn't been too bad. I mean, taking care of soldiers that got wounded, that was part of the job. But that Sui Tre battle, that was pretty bad. The battle was happened about probably a couple of weeks, maybe a month before the Vietnam peace talks were going to start in Paris. And the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong wanted a decisive victory. So they had two regiments of well-trained soldiers try to overrun that artillery position that I was talking about. First, they had command detonated those mines to blew up those couple of choppers, and then 2 days or 3 days later, they did this what we might call a human wave attack. They were just coming and coming and coming and coming, running up against quad 50 machine guns, shooting at point blank range, while they were having people that had been wounded. They had strapped mines onto them, claymore mines, and they would set them off into a. It was just a horrendous mess. I don't remember anything else. I just remember a day later when, you know, the battlefield had been cleared off, and we were burying all these Viet Cong, and I remember the bulldozers making this mass grave and us tossing those bodies in there. I was not physically myself doing that, but I remember that. And I remember taking a picture of one of the quad 50s that the barrels had kind of drooped a little bit. They almost had melted, and, you know, the aftermath I remember, but actually during the time, no, I don't remember much. That day, a letter came in, that week, whatever, from her, and she was very upbeat. She was happy. It was a supporting letter. You know, we can do this. With God's help, all of that. I forget, I should have kept that letter. Anyway, I decided, well, maybe I should not do this. Maybe this is still my chosen country. It's still the life that I wanted, so maybe I'll just stick it out. And that was a turning point. That letter from her that came in just kind of blew that away, and I decided to stick it out. My time in the field with A Company, it was difficult. I mean, weeks ran together, days ran together. We really didn't know what day of the week it was many times. I remember some of the guys complaining. They'd been in the field for 6 months or so, and then they were going to have some maybe lighter duty or base camp duty, and they got transferred to another outfit, and then they were newbies again, and they had to go out in the field again. Yeah. One of the things that people now kind of shiver at, I carried a quarter-pound of C4 in my side pocket, because I'd take a little ball about the size of my little finger here, stick it underneath my coffee cup and light it, and it'd heat up that water in no time. Well, I carried a medic bag that had medical dressings in it. I carried extra water. Our evacuation procedures were good. We were what you might call, they call it air mobile. I think today they call it air assault. But we flew everywhere we went, and we had direct support from our aviation unit. So if we took casualties, they were usually there pretty quick. So the main thing was, stop the bleeding, splinter wounds. Most of them were out of there before you could start an IV anyway. But if we did, then we do a blood expander. Morphine, I carried morphine because we used that quite a bit. I did like being a medic better than being an infantry. I was with the infantry, obviously, and I did like being a medic. As a matter of fact, I liked being a medic well enough that I stayed in and became a physician assistant later. So, yeah, I enjoyed medicine. I enjoyed being helpful. I enjoyed being able to relieve somebody's suffering. So from Camp Caroline, they were building a road. They were going to make it a permanent base, and we would take an APC out to the road, sitting on top of this thing, going through the rice paddies, sloshing, and we get to the road, and then we would sweep the road as a platoon, and they always had a medic with them, and I went many days. And then the tank would follow us, and then the convoy would follow the tank. So we would walk the road, and they had found a mine. They had marked it, and then the minesweepers, the guys with the minesweepers went on while we went and set this thing off. And they were going to play catch-up. So all of us hopped on the back of this tank, on the big metal part, not where the tracks are, and 3 or 4 of us on there, trying to play catch-up with the rest of the platoon. Well, they had marked another mine, and the tank driver didn't see it in time. So he hit this thing, and it blew the track on the right side, and us went up in the air. I don't know how far, it just seems like it went on forever, but I basically got blown off that tank and wound up on the road. And the one thing I remember that kind of upset me, although it's part of the job, I guess, the platoon sergeant said, "Hey, Doc, take care of these guys. See if any of them is hurt." What about me? I'm hurt. My ears are ringing. I just went and got blown off of this tank myself. That was the thought I had. Immediately, again, the job is the job, so I went, looked at the guys. Fortunately, nobody got hurt. No broken ankles, no broken bones, no bleeding. And Sergeant Norm Smith, he was one of the squad leader sergeants, says, "Hey, Doc, now you're the Flying Dutchman." I hated it. Later on, I wore it as a badge of honor, yeah. 2 or 3 months later, because, it stuck. The name stuck. I was the Flying Dutchman. I had gone through the Tet Offensive. It was not a good time to be trying to leave anyway. And as a matter of fact, when I left Tonsanut Air Base in the middle of the night in the blackout conditions, we were trying to get out of there because there was talk of maybe mortaring the airfield, or that the Viet Cong were going to try to mortar the airfield. It was Eastern Airlines, I believe. And we flew out in the blackout conditions. Like I said, they got off the plane and we got on the plane. There was no fanfare, no nothings in the middle of the night.